Happy 11/11. We are still experiencing some very tense and intense energetics going on this week, even though the Mercury Mars square Saturn aspect that was really building and activated this week came to a climax yesterday. It is moving apart right now. So this aspect is waning, but it is only, it is just barely moving apart. So this energy is still very much carrying through. We are also in our first quarter square phase of the moon right now, the moon in Aquarius squaring the sun in Scorpio today. This also can bring some conflict and tension inherently with it as well, but we do have the moon coming into conjunction with Jupiter today, and this should be doing some things to help us regain our optimism, regain our hope, and feel a little bit more positive about the circumstances that have transpired over the course of this week. So that's a positive. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. Today is Thursday, November 11th, 2021, 11/11. My name is Aubrey, and this is your astrological outlook of the day. And yes, tensions are still high. The intensity is still off the chart, but we are moving out of this big activation that we've had this week and, more so dealing with the aftermath, the aftershocks, and the ripple effects that are coming from things that happened this week now. Although, like I said, we are in the first quarter square phase of the moon. This means that the moon is forming a square to the sun. The new moon in Scorpio happened last week. Now the moon is in Aquarius, which means it's forming a square to both the position of the new moon and the position where the sun is now. And so this generally, in and of itself, is a time of the month where we experience more inherent conflict with things generally, because the first quarter square moon, this is the time every month, if we are looking at our lunar cycle in terms of a phase of growth, where with the new moon, we are planting our seeds, we are setting our goals and intentions. And with the first quarter square moon, if it were the seed that was planted, this would be the time when it's starting to break and bust through the soil and start to actually experience an apparent growth that we can witness happening. Whereas in terms of how the energy is operating with the new moon, whatever intentions we set, goals we set, plans we laid with the new moon during the first quarter square, this is usually when we are taking some type of action, stepping out of our comfort zone, really initiating the things that we started with the new moon. We can face a bit of conflict or tension in that process as we are pursuing our goals and our plans that began again with the new moon in Scorpio. So having our energy today representative of this phase of the month, which is the first quarter square, that is also bringing up some inherent tension, some inherent conflict on an emotional internal level always. But then when you add it, of course, to the context of this other major square that we've had going on in the same signs, Scorpio and Aquarius, between Mars and Mercury and Saturn exact yesterday. There are just heightened levels of tension, frustration, volatility, anger, passion as well with this, and willpower, a desire to really triumph and to not be restricted by limitations or boundaries that are out of alignment with our truth or authenticity at this point in time. And we've been dealing with this energy. I mean, yesterday the moon was also in Aquarius representing the first quarter square, and the moon was with Saturn yesterday too. So, that was very intense. Okay. Today though, even though we still have the Aquarius moon and we still have this square going on, it's actually today is the day where the moon will square the sun exactly by the current position where it is now. The moon is in a conjunction with Jupiter today. And again, the moon in a conjunction with Jupiter, this really does have a tendency of restoring optimism, restoring hope, expanding our faith in everything that's happening, and, just generally giving us a more positive understanding, comprehension of the things that have been happening. And, with the moon, an emotional alignment that is more positive about what may have transpired or occurred over the course of this past week. We should be feeling more positive and optimistic, like I said, internally aligning with a higher perspective and understanding truth. Jupiter also rules divine truth, and embracing our wisdom gained through experience and feeling emotionally ready to leave the past behind. Now, remember, Jupiter is at a relatively significant degree right now just because of what this specific degree where Jupiter is symbolizing in the context of what all the other energetics are really pushing us towards towards right now. And Jupiter is currently located at 24 degrees of Aquarius. And that Sabian symbol, or the energetic of that degree, described in a picture form so that we just get a better idea of how that exact specific location, that degree in the zodiac, how it discharges, how it operates. This is described by the Sabian symbols, and the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees of Aquarius, where Jupiter is currently, is a man turning his back on his passions, embraces deep wisdom gained through experience. And wisdom gained through experience, this is the Chiron theme. This is the Chiron archetype. And when we had our new moon in Scorpio this cycle, Mars, ruler of the Scorpio cycle, was in an exact opposition to the Chiron point, talking about really cultivating the valuable wisdom that we've gained through experience this cycle, and using that to help assist us and carry us through all of this turbulence that we are experiencing now, all of these deep truths, these revelations that we are uncovering, and what we're coming up against in the process of doing that, represented by this Mars Mercury in square to Saturn. So Jupiter in the conjunction with the moon today is speaking to this wisdom gained through experience being what can elevate us emotionally at this point in time and help us get through these energies. Also, Jupiter is the current ruler of the South Node in Sagittarius. The South Node rules what we need to let go, what we need to move on from, the belief system specifically that we need to release so that we can move forward into a radically different paradigm of experience, really, with an entirely different viewpoint of reality based on these deep truths that we are learning now, essentially, with the North Node in Gemini, and at the current positions of the North and South Node, actually talking about the blessings and the gifts and the fulfillment that is promised to us once we go through this metamorphosis process and release the past. But again, Jupiter right now is speaking to the South Node, and with the moon coming into the conjunction with Jupiter at this degree about wisdom gained through experience, and the man turning his back on his passions embraces a deep wisdom gained through experience. It's talking about bringing us into an emotional alignment with the ability to release things from the past, belief systems and constructs in our lives that we may have loved and may have carried us through a long way. We have been maybe very passionate about, but are no longer truly aligned with the wisdom that we have gained through the experience and the value that represents, and helping us to align emotionally today in the midst of all of this crazy that's going on, so that we can begin to release these things and open to truth and embrace our faith, both keywords associated with the Jupiter archetype, and begin to move down this totally new and expanded path of experience that is definitely in alignment with our true and personal authenticity. Jupiter in Aquarius, the sign of authenticity, the sign that rules the paradigm that we are energetically transitioning into right now. So a very uplifting energetic in spite of all of the more difficult, intense, and volatile energetics that we have playing out on the ground. Now I want to talk just for a moment about the position of both the sun and the earth today in terms of their degree location and the Sabian symbols that they are discharging, what they are symbolically talking about today, so we can have a better understanding of the context in which all of this energy is playing out today. And today the sun is at 20 degrees of Scorpio. That Sabian symbol is a woman drawing aside two dark curtains that closed the entrance to a sacred pathway. Again, all about secrets revealed, things from the past that have been hidden, exposed, ancient truths brought to light. Again, we are seeing into places that have been closed and hidden to us. The woo is rising and we are all being immersed in it. Things hidden, brought to light, described by this degree, the entire nature of this Scorpio cycle in opposition to Uranus, and exactly what was also happening with Mars in a conjunction to Mercury. The exposure of ancient truths and secrets, all of this Scorpio energy right now, that is one thing that we are in the midst of, is uncovering the truth of the spiritual nature of our reality and the power that that truly gives us to co-create with universe and really become masters over our own reality in correspondence with God in this paradigm moving forward. the re-recognition and the mass availability of the ancient truths of this reality. The women drawing aside two dark curtains that blocked the opening of an ancient pathway. Seeing what's been happening also behind closed doors, behind the curtain, under the curtain, behind the veil. This entire astrological lunar new year, I believe the Sabian symbol that was the degree of the new moon this year was a woman carrying a veil, a woman in pastel colors carrying a valuable but veiled load. This whole year has been talking about really helping us to see what is under the veil, what is beyond the veil, what is behind the curtain, what is on the other side of the screen. And today, following these huge activations that we've had all week in Scorpio and Aquarius that have really been pushing towards this in the midst of a Scorpio cycle in opposition to Uranus, the Great Awakener. This is very, this symbol, I feel like being present today for the day following this is really not much of a coincidence. And light overtaking and penetrating into the darkness with this as well. She's drawing aside the curtains that close the entrance to an ancient sacred pathway, letting in the light. And so I feel like that is also a description for what is going on. And that is also a description for what is going on this cycle and this year as well. Seeing underneath the valuable but veiled load, discovering what is truly inside, and as a metaphor for the truth of the value of the contents that we hold inside of us, and really being reacquainted with that and rediscovering that and using that as our fuel to carry us forward. That is what we are doing this entire cycle, this entire year. Also today, we have the Earth at 20 degrees of Taurus, and that Sabian symbol is wisps of wing-like clouds streaming across the sky. To me, this degree is all about streams of consciousness, elevated vibrations, higher perspective, floating or rising above mentally or vibrationally, flashes of insight, epiphanies, conscious awakenings, very Uranian degree to me, very Aquarian degree to me. The air, the wing-like clouds, it's just like things like electricity going through the air, like things flowing through the air, streams of consciousness, that type of energy happening on the ground. To me, I feel like this is a reference for an elevated vibrational evolution that is occurring on the ground right now as we go through this crazy cycle that is really a major transitional point vibrationally, I feel, for humanity collectively into the age of Aquarius. Also, today, of course, like I said, we do still have Mars in a square to Saturn, Mercury as well, but Mercury moves much faster than Mars, and Mercury is rapidly on its way out of this square, so it's not as significant today. But Mars today, 9 degrees of Scorpio, and Saturn, 8 degrees of Aquarius, 1 degree off orb square. 9 degrees of Scorpio is a dentist hard at work. 8 degrees of Aquarius is beautifully gowned wax figures on display. These two planets in a square to each other, first of all, Mars at 9 Scorpio, this is putting our energy into fixing root issues. And Saturn at 8 degrees of Aquarius at the beautifully gowned wax figures degree, this is like a duty or an obligation or work we have to put into maintaining images or appearances of some kind. This could play out symbolically, energetically as action, passion, desire, and free will versus limitation, duty, obligation, responsibility, and authority. Mars versus Saturn. Also, personal healing with Mars and Scorpio, deep personal regeneration of root issues versus an obligation to the overall whole or the overall good with Saturn and Aquarius. So that is, some ways that we could still be feeling this aspect play out today. Just generally, though, limitations to our action and what we are trying to say or do or accomplish, or limitations to the things that we have been working on and putting energy into and trying to get out at this point in time, maybe hitting roadblocks, hitting obstructions or delays. But Saturn in a square to Mars, this is just a conflict between action, motivation, and free will, and the drive and the desire to act and make something happen versus some type of duty, responsibility, obligation, limitation, obstruction, blockage, boundary. That is what we are dealing with these two planets in a square. And, you know, with it being in Scorpio, this is again that like deep personal like discovery and healing and regeneration of root issues versus the greater good, the overall whole, and the like societal expectations sometimes can be represented by Aquarius as well. So it is what it is. And like I said, though, this energy is waning out now, but it is still in effect, and we are dealing with the waves and the ripples and the aftershocks of this big square with these 3 planets that was in effect all week. Still a very tense energy today with the moon in Aquarius squaring the sun in Scorpio. The same signs, again, that Mars and Mercury were squaring Saturn, this Scorpio Aquarius 90-degree dynamic is what has been coming up. And again, that is deep root issues versus like where we're trying to go in the future, and the greater whole, the greater good, the greater collective. Okay. So yeah, but then, you know, like I said, we do have the moon and Jupiter today, and that is really like our saving grace in this whole thing. We really should be feeling more emotionally uplifted and optimistic and positive, more hopeful, and just an expanded sense of faith and trust, and also an internal alignment with truth really going on with this today. And an expanded sense of understanding about things, an elevated perspective as well. So that is really what I have to say about the astrology today. We are just on the heels, like I've said, of this really intense energy that we've had going on all week, and sort of letting things play out now and letting the cards fall after what has just transpired. So now I want to get into the tarot for a quick second. I got some cards this morning. I asked God to clarify what the collective energy is like for today as we are coming out of this big square that we had going on yesterday. And it was interesting because the card that came out when I asked for clarification on the collective energy was the 7 of Swords in reverse. And at first I was like, that's interesting. What are we not fighting about? Like, what are we giving into? What are we surrendering to? Because the 7 of Swords, this is about pushing back against something, fighting back against something, defending against something. But when it's in reverse, it's like the opposite of those things. Like, what are we surrendering to? What are we not pushing back against? What are we accepting? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But then I look at the back of the deck and it just made like immediate perfect sense in the context of these energetics that we have going on right now, because the back of the deck is the Tower. And to me, this Tower card is just absolutely emblematic of Uranus and what Uranus does and how Uranus makes changes happen and how Uranus sets things right. It really makes all things crumble that are out of alignment with where we need to be. So we're really left with only what we actually need to be. And then things have a tendency of like falling into place and turning in such a way that everything becomes so much better than it ever was or had been. But this is the process that Uranus usually takes to get us there. And so having gotten these 2 cards, it's like we are surrendering to the galactic fixer and the divine intervention. We are not fighting or resisting or pushing back on the major upheavals and changes happening now. This is an acceptance, actually, collectively, of radical change and upheaval, and not fighting against the interventions happening, coming down from universe that are really throwing things up in the air for us right now. And like I said, to me, the Tower is very emblematic of the Uranian vibe, the Uranian themes. So it's like, no, we are not fighting against the interventions that are happening right now as a result of the galactic fixer who has been divinely ordained to come in and put things right now. We don't have like the willpower or the passion or any desire to fight against the changes really that are happening, even though they're really throwing our whole world upside down. It's like deep inside, we know that they're ultimately like right or for the best, or we just like, we can't go on the way that things have been anymore. So it's almost like, all right, well, whatever's gotta happen, because this just, there's no way out and it doesn't feel right anymore. And so it's like the whole Tower has to come down. So, you know, I wrote, it's like allowing the tower or the cards to fall as a metaphor for all of the past structures and beliefs that no longer align with our personal truth and desires. And that's really a lot of what I was saying with the moon in the conjunction with Jupiter today as well, while we have the South Node in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, talking about turning our back on our passions, embracing wisdom gained through experience, finally being ready to let go of the structures and the foundations that we have built up in our life that potentially are no longer resonating with us, no longer aligning with us, and no longer bringing fulfillment. And it's like we really are just at a point of surrendering to these big and dynamic changes that are happening. And that's really probably the best place that we can be at collectively, honestly, right now, because fighting against the changes of Uranus and universe is always a fruitless effort and not in our best interest, because the more we fight, the more difficult these changes become. Surrendering to Uranus and universe is always the best way to deal with Uranian energies and to just have faith and trust. And that's what we're doing today with the moon in the conjunction to Jupiter in the midst of all of this craziness that we have going on. So today, look at me, only 20 minutes. I have some more time. I'm going to pull us a synchronicity card because I have the time to do that right now. So let's see, this synchronicity card, this is a message from God or spirit. It's just going to be a little bit of advice or insight or inspiration for whoever is watching this right now as you're going about your day. I don't have time to do this every day, but I do today, and I love when I have time to do it because I feel like these messages are so special and they always correlate so well with the astrology and the tarot that we have going on any given day. So, one just flipped over and it says, think of good. It says, the mouth of the righteous is a well of life. Proverbs 10:11. As you continue to think on whatsoever things are true, lovely, noble, and of good report, you will gradually change the negative patterns of your thought. You become aware of a gradual change and think constructively based on what you know to be right and good. I pulled this card recently too. It always amazes me when I will get the same card within such a short period of time of doing these videos because there's so many of them. So this must really be an important message for us right now. And I mean, always thinking of good is the key to success in this reality. You know, it really helps us keep our vibration high, which helps us to attract the right things, the positive experiences into our lives. But we really probably are needing this a lot right now. And considering that we have Jupiter conjuncting, or the moon conjuncting Jupiter today, we really should be sort of organically doing this anyways. So that is your message from God today. That is our synchronicity card. Think of good. Keep our mind elevated and thinking about the positive things in our experience as we surrender to these crazy changes that are happening now, knowing that blessings and gifts and fulfillment are the ultimate outcome after we go through this really crazy transitional process that is leading us into the age of Aquarius. So that is what I have for my video today, you guys. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Share it with your friends if you think they would be interested. Please leave me comments, you guys. I absolutely love your comments. I love reading your comments. If you need to get a hold of me, my email address is aubreystarsAstrology@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page and a Facebook group as well if you guys are into that. And definitely please come back with me tomorrow, you guys. I'm going to be spilling the tea on the astrology for the weekend and everything that we have coming as we move into next week, which will host our full moon in Taurus. So have a beautiful, beautiful day, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.